The Amazon basin is the largest rainforest on the planet. Indigenous peoples call it the heart of Gaia. Of course, we all have called it the lungs of the earth, the trees, the way that they absorb CO2 and breathe out oxygen. Scientists now agree the Amazon is heart of the planet. So why is that? This is the largest river basin on the planet. It dwarfs all other systems. The combined flow of all the 6 next largest rivers combined doesn't even match the flow of the Amazon River. Now, this is just what's coming out of the mouth of the Atlantic. The Amazon rainforest actually lifts up a river, an atmospheric river, bigger than the Amazon River every day into the sky. Of course, it expands 9 countries, and over 400 indigenous peoples call the Amazon home. And their territories are some of the most conserved and best conserved. I wanted to show you this atmospheric rivers and how they work. We have the moisture that comes in from the atmosphere is beckoned by the low pressure zone in the forest. And that low pressure zone then generates the rain that falls on the trees. The trees then evapotranspire that back into the sky many times before it is actually expelling heat from the surface of the continent up into the stratosphere and cooling the planet. And those atmospheric rivers then basically go north and south, bringing rain to the entire continent of South America, but also helping determine moisture content in the Sierra Nevada and responsible for agricultural productivity in North America. Now, you can see the Amazon is literally beating like a heart. Generating these atmospheric rivers is why the indigenous peoples call it the heart of the planet. Now, this system, this entire system, is dependent on the rainforest, on the trees. The trees are doing the heavy lifting. On average, a mature tree in the Amazon is able to evapotranspire 1,000 liters of water vapor per day into the sky. 400 billion trees across the continent. That's why they're generating these atmospheric rivers larger than the Amazon. Now, sadly, the Amazon is at a tipping point of collapse where this hydroclimatic system is faltering. The flying rivers, the atmospheric rivers, are off course and in some cases interrupted. I was up in Cali at the biodiversity convention a few weeks ago. And from there I went to Sao Paulo. I flew over the Amazon for about 5 hours. And to my surprise, it was a beautiful day with clear skies. I could see the forest. I was excited about that. But after about 2 hours into the flight, looking out the window going, I don't see any clouds. What I could see is smoke from fires. NASA reported over 50,000 fires last month over the Amazon. These are not wildfires, some of them may be, but most of them are man-made fires set to clear land. Now, we are seeing the worst drought in the Amazon's history. I was also for a month in the Brazilian Amazon this summer on a river, on a boat, and recently the area that I was is now 2 kilometers walk on a sandbank to the Rio Negro. We have truly started to see a shrinking of the water table, and the rivers are interrupted right now during this drought. So, of course, the tipping point is not far. We know that these prolonged droughts also create warmer air over the Atlantic, which also contributes to hurricanes we've been seeing in the Atlantic. So we have to take action to avert the tipping point of no return. So what do we have to do that? We actually have to set our target of 80% of rainforest restored and protected. We have to get to zero deforestation. Most importantly, we have to legalize indigenous territories because they are doing the best job of protecting the forest. External debt of these Amazon countries is a driver of deforestation. They're mortgaging the rainforest just to pay the interest on the external debt. we have to cancel debt relief at scale for tropical rainforest countries, not just in the Amazon. And we have to set our sights for large-scale reforestation. Something like 4% of the Amazon must be restored. And we need a moratorium on the extractive economy, the roads, the cattle ranching, the pipelines, the oil drilling, and the mining. Ultimately, to save the Amazon, we don't just need to tweak public policy, we need to shift our paradigm, our worldview that sees nature as a resource here to support our growing life-blind economic system. We have to move into aligning human well-being with the flourishing of nature. Ultimately, that's a paradigm shift. And the previous speaker spoke beautifully about indigenous cosmology that supports that. And I want to share with you one of my key colleagues and collaborators, Gregorio Diaz-Mirabal, would say, our relationship with forests and rivers is not a relationship of 10 or 20 years. It is a relationship of more than 10,000 years. Indigenous peoples do not talk about conserving nature. We talk about respecting nature because we see her as our family. We see her as our mother. So, of course, there's a lot of exciting things happening in the Amazon, led by indigenous peoples. And for the last 7 years, I've had the honor of supporting an indigenous-led alliance that's working to protect one part of the Amazon, one of the headwaters in Ecuador and northern Peru, in a place that was a Pleistocene refuge that helped harbor life after the last ice age. It's a place where indigenous peoples are majority landowners and have done an incredible job protecting and conserving those forests. It's actually registered the highest rates of biodiversity anywhere on planet Earth. In the sacred headwaters, we have an area that starts in the glaciers in the Andes and runs through the rivers of the Napo and Pastaza, Marañón. Here, indigenous peoples have made a commitment. They have united. 30 indigenous nations have united and made a commitment to protect and defend and restore this bioregion. And this bioregional alliance, working to protect an area the size of Italy, is also working on transforming values and transitioning the economic system so that it is life-affirming. We have 4 strategic priorities that just came out of a big meeting we had of our General Assembly. These are about defending indigenous territories, supporting land tenure, land rights, helping indigenous peoples establish their own autonomous territorial governments, advancing the well-being. The second area is advancing well-being. Indigenous peoples are committed to a concept of buen vivir, this idea of living in harmony with the earth. So this is really about regenerative economy, livelihoods. It's about food security. It's about restoration, about basically community well-being funds and initiatives like the Jaguar token that was just announced that helps a community set up a conservation fund to implement its vision, its life plan. We're also building alliances and generating capacity. The Living School of the Amazon is training the next generation of youth leaders. I'm super excited about the work we're doing to support young people to learn from their elders, the traditional knowledge, as well as learning tools and technologies like GIS mapping and flying drones and using camera traps to document wildlife. And lastly, while we're working to build this new regime of governance and stewardship, we're also fighting in the front lines to stop roads, to stop pipelines. About 80% of this bioregion is threatened by oil and mining and logging and roads and dams. And so we must basically shift the basically predatory war with nature that our economic system is waging. There's so many solutions. We are in a laboratory of innovation led by indigenous peoples. And I would just say, I'm inspired by this idea of the GEP, the gross ecological product, to end the focus on the GDP, which is the tool that is used by governments to justify the destruction of the most important ecosystems on Earth. Rights of nature. Ecuador was one of the first to adopt rights of nature in the Constitution. We're winning lawsuits where nature is the subject of rights. We're working on this idea of can we create ecological economic zones where the only investments that are able to be harnessed are the ones that meet both the ecological flourishing and the human well-being test. Indigenous peoples want direct access to financing. Only 1% of philanthropic dollars make it all the way to the territories. Can we create systems to bring in investments and donations directly to the front lines? We are working on solar canoes, universal basic income at a collective level, food security. All of these are being innovated, and the vision of the bioregional plan that we created is helping to put into clarity the goals of the system. You know, many of us talk about changing the system, but we have to remember that unless we change the goals of the system, we're not going to be able to get very far-reaching goals. And then if we change the paradigm of Earth as a living, breathing entity, an organism in which we are embedded in a strand of the web of life, where we are cells in the body of a living Earth, and that we seek coherence, to be in coherence with life. A Nobel Prize scientist came up with this idea of islands of coherence, that when there is imbalance in the system, that small islands of coherence can help shift the entire system to a higher order. And that's what we're doing in the Sacred Headwaters. And we invite you to join us. The fact is that time is running out. The window of opportunity is shrinking. And we must align. We must be working together in far-reaching, courageous goals. In fact, we must connect our own hearts. And I invite you to do that right now, to just connect your heart with the heart of Gaia, to hear that frequency, to tune in to that resonance. And that just like your cells in your body know how to keep the organism alive, we all must work together to keep Mother Earth alive. And so let's join together and make future generations proud of our actions today. Thank you.